Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, 100% Pure Elvis. Thank you all for taking the time out to return to my channel today. And if this is your first time tuning in to 100% Pure Elvis, welcome aboard and I hope you enjoy this upload. So today I'm going to be talking about my love of Elvis Presley music from the 1970s. So many subscribers to my channel will be aware that the 1970s is my favourite era of Elvis music. And that is simply because growing up in a household full of love for Elvis, my mum constantly played Elvis music from the 1970s. And, you know, for me, growing up and then becoming an Elvis fan, you know, the music that I would always go to as a first stop would be the music from the 70s. I think Elvis had a richer voice in the 1970s. I think he grew into his voice. I think it was more powerful, you know, especially when you're looking at Aloha from Hawaii and Elvis on tour, etc. I just think he had the best voice at that time throughout his career. That's not to take anything away from Elvis from the 1950s as the rock and roll star, because in the 1950s he had a different powerful voice that resonated a different generation. In the 1960s, you know, he had a softer voice, more ballad type of voice, who did more ballads. But then getting into the 70s, you know, I think he found rich form with his voice. And what I mean by that is, you know, he knew how to use his tool, and he used it to great effect. So what I'm going to share with you today on this upload, I've got quite a few records from the 1970s that I'm just going to talk you through, and I do have some duplicates, so again I am sorry about that, but I like to share different sets in my collection. And I'm just going to talk through each vinyl or record and talk you through my favorite songs from each of these albums from the 1970s and the reasons why. And again, you might agree, you might disagree. They're in no particular order. They're in no particular order of what years they were released in. I'm just starting from the top. And again, I think I possibly have about 20 that I want to share with you. So again, I thought, let's share this journey together of my love for Elvis music from the 1970s. So on the top, we have Elvis Today album. And Elvis Today has my favorite Elvis Presley track on it, and that is Bringing It Back. I absolutely love that song from the 1970s. And also I love I Can Help and I Love You So, Woman Without Love, Fairy Tale, Pieces of My Life. I just think this is such a superb album. It has to be one of my favorites from the 1970s. And I just think Elvis is in great voice on the Today album. I also love the front cover from the 1970s. I think is that image from around 73, I believe, or 72 or 74. Please correct me if I am wrong. But again, so the Today album features my favorite Elvis Presley song, and it is Bringing It Back, closely followed by I Can Help and the beautiful Woman Without Love. Elvis Today, for me, he was in great voice on that album. And then we go on to a total different album from the 1970s, Elvis Country. And again, on Elvis Country, my favorite would have to go to There Goes My Everything, Faded Love, I Washed My Hands in Muddy Water, I Really Don't Want to Know, whole lot of shaking going on, Make the World Go Away. And I'm going to have to change my mind. This is what I mean being an Elvis fan. You sometimes change your mind on what your favorite song is on a particular album. On this album, it would have to go to Tomorrow Never Comes. But again, a different album for Elvis. in the early 1970s. Again, I love everything about this album. I love the design, I love the tracks, I love how Elvis sounds. Elvis country, with my favourite being Tomorrow Never Comes, followed by There Goes My Everything. The next one was a release after this was released, I think it was after Elvis's passing. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not overly too sure. Simply Elvis, Welcome to My World. And again, I just think that's a great front cover. Not many people like this front cover. I absolutely adore it. I think it's a great artist's picture of Elvis. Now on the back, great track listing on Welcome to My World. Now, my favourite on Welcome to My World would have to go to Gentle on My Mind, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry Live, and Help Me Make It Through the Night, Release Me and Let Me Love Again. But stunning album. Again, Elvis sounds better than ever. Welcome to My World. The next, again, is an album that should have performed better in the United Kingdom and in the United States as well. And it is the album Good Times. And for me, I love Take Good Care of Her, Spanish Eyes, but my favourite would go to Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues. Again, Elvis is in fine voice, different array of songs on the Good Times album. You got My Boy, which is outstanding, Loving Arms, and again, I just love this album. But yeah, I would have to go for. It's a difficult one. I love Take Good Care of Her with Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues, but again, it's an album for me that is just. It's such a superb album from the 1970s. I was watching a Elvis YouTube channel recently, and he was talking about Elvis Presley releases from the 1970s and why the 1970s is his favorite era for Elvis music. And I actually totally agreed with his understanding of Elvis's voice from the 1970s and the rich form that he came into, the control of his voice. I just think personally was just, it just was outstanding. The next one, this is a Follow That Dream release. Obviously, it wasn't released in the 1970s, but I'm sharing this with you because the album itself was recorded in 1976. It's Elvis's last studio album, Moody Blue. And again, this is on the Follow That Dream label on the clear vinyl. But I won't go through this one, but I wanted to share it with you. So actually on this one, I've got Moody Blue next as well, the original. So I'm just going to, on this particular release, I absolutely love. Let's have a look at, America is on this one. Softly As I Leave You. Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, which is gorgeous. Bitter They Are, Harder They Fall. But so this is the Follow That Dream clear vinyl gatefold issue. This has recently been reissued on gorgeous gold vinyl, which I do not own as yet. Here we go. We're back to the studio album of Moody Blue. And for me, what a great last studio album from the King. And again, most tracks on the album were live recordings, but the studio recordings from Graceland, I love It's Easy for You. She Thinks I Still Care. Moody, yes, it's got to go for Moody Blue. But the live tracks, I love Let Me Be There and If You Love Me, Let Me Know, and the haunting Unchained Melody. But Moody Blue is just such an outstanding album. And way down Elvis Presley's last number one during his lifetime. in the UK charts. Well, actually, it hit number one after Elvis's passing. But again, an album that I never tire of listening to, and I just think his voice is so controlled on this album. You know, the recordings at Graceland, he's just in complete control. The next one, we have Elvis. Otherwise, this can be called the Fool album as well. Again, many people always say, well, no, it's not the Fool album. It's just simply called Elvis. And for me, you know, again, but it is called Elvis. But when you are looking for this album, you can also see it called Elvis Fool. And again, you know, for me, I absolutely love Where Do I Go From Here? It's Impossible. Love Me, Love the Life I Lead. And again, so look, I forgot on the back here, inside, I've got the NME Austin Butler Elvis magazine because I wanted to keep that safe. But yeah, for me, and Where Do I Go From Here? But I love Fool. Again, an album that gets a raw deal, in my opinion, but an outstanding album from the 1970s, Elvis Fool. Now, the next, again, many subscribers that have been with me from the beginning will know this is my favourite Elvis album throughout his career. And obviously, this is from the 1970, and it is That's the Way It Is. This is on the Music on Vinyl label. This comprises of 4 LPs inside, but let's talk about the original album itself. I just can't help believing I've Lost You, Mary in the Morning, How the Web Was Woven, 20 Days and 20 Nights, and The Next Step Is Love. My favourite would have to go to his cover version of Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. I just think the way Elvis sings that, it's just haunting, emotional, and again, I love everything about this album. There's no weak songs. Everything about That's the Way It Is album for me is perfection. The front cover, the stylization, the song choices, Elvis's voice, absolutely for me sums up what a great entertainer Elvis was. The next is a gospel album from the 1970s, He Touched Me. Originally, this is 1972 release. And on this gospel album, I'm going to go for I've Got Confidence. I'm going to go for A Thing Called Love. He Touched Me. He Is My Everything. So if I had to choose a favourite, it'd go to He Touched Me. You know, when you hear Elvis gospel, you know, it's just gets you into a place where you believe everything he is singing, all the words he is singing. You believe everything that he is singing to you in respect of the gospel music. Elvis loved gospel. This was his go-to. And again, I personally believe Elvis would have done more gospel music going forward in his career had he not tragically passed away. But great album from 1972. He Touched Me, with the title track being my favourite on this particular release. The next, we've got Elvis in Person at the International Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada. This is a 1970 release. And on the flip, you've got Elvis back in Memphis. So again, the Elvis in Person, you've got, my favourite would go to In the Ghetto, I Can't Stop Loving You, Suspicious Minds, everything about it, Johnny Be Good. Back in Memphis, obviously, I would go to This Is the Story, but that's not from the 70s. From a Jack to a King, Do You Know Who I Am? But The Fair's Moving On This is my favourite on Back in Memphis. Again, a great double album here. Great release. Next, we have Raised on Rock. Again, another album that gets a raw deal in some quarters of the Elvis world. And again, it's not a particular favourite from the 1970s, but I think it's a great album all told. And I absolutely adore I Miss You, Girl of Mine. If you don't come back, find out what's happening. I'm not overly keen on Three Corn Patches, and I'm not overly keen on Are You Sincere? But again, Raised on Rock is a great track. And what I mean by, it's not an album that I tend to listen to a great deal from the 1970s. But again, it's not as bad as what people say in the Elvis world. I just think it just get a raw deal. So again, he's actually in great voice on this album. And so for me, an all right album from the 1970s with some great tracks on it. There's a couple of weak tracks on there that I don't really enjoy listening to, but there we have Elvis, Raised on Rock, or sometimes it can be called For All Time's Sake. Next one is, again, an album that gets a raw deal from some quarters, Love Letters from Elvis. And again, a 1971 release. And for me, on Love Letters from Elvis, I love Life, This Is Our Dance, Only Believe, Love Letters, It Ain't No Big Thing, But It's Growing. Again, I think it's a great album. Again, there's some people that think it's quite a weak album, but no. What I mean by that is this was a mashup album, and Elvis really wasn't happy with the release of this album because these were tracks that did not make the final cut on some Elvis albums. So I do understand why some Elvis fans feel that this is a weaker album, but I thoroughly enjoy it. And if I had to choose a favourite, I am going to go for Life, and I do love Heart of Rome. So there we have Love Letters from Elvis. Now you're going to have to excuse me a moment. I just got to shut the door because I can hear some noise. So I will be straight back. No, I am sorry about that. That was slightly unprofessional, but I didn't want to restart the upload again, but just heard some background noise from my kitchen. The next one I've already done. I've got a double copy of the Elvis album, otherwise called Fool. We're going on to the album that I probably listened to the least in my Elvis collection from the 1970s. The reason behind it is obviously because it's so sad for me to listen to Elvis on this album, because I know it's his last recording in concert. Elvis in concert, live recording of his last appearance. As we all know, the image on the front there is from 1975, and the image on the back, I do believe, is from 1972. When I do listen to this, I'm in an emotional state. It's because I adore the album, and I just think Elvis is in great voice. I just think he doesn't sound better. Again, some people would say, well, actually, you can see he's struggling on some parts of the concerts, but for me personally, I just think it's such a great last live recording concert. And again, you're going to have to go to the haunting, Unchained Melody, My Way of Love, the Can't Help Falling in Love. You Gave Me a Mountain. It just sounds amazing. So you've got Elvis in concert, live recording of his last appearance. The next one, again, I love the front cover of this. Elvis on Stage. And again, this is from 1970. So one of the first albums released in 1970. I love everything about the front and back cover here. Now on Stage, I'm going to go for Release Me and Let Me Love Again, Sweet Caroline, Runaway, Walk a Mile in My Shoes, Let It Be Me, The Wonder of You. I mean, everything about this album is outstanding. I mean, obviously, Sweet Caroline is a Neil Diamond cover, but I think Elvis makes it his own. Runaway, Dal Shannon. It's just, oh God, if I had to choose a favourite, it's really difficult. I'm going to go for Let It Be Me. Yeah, I'm going to go for Let It Be Me as my favourite on this album. That could change. But at this moment in time, on the On Stage album, my favourite is Let It Be Me. Outstanding on stage, in concert here. Never sounds better. I just think the structure of his voice, the tone, just everything about Elvis's voice is just, it's just amazing. Again, we've got Promised Land next, and Promised Land is an album that, again, I do tend to listen to a lot, and it's just an album that, again, I just think is a great studio album from Elvis. I love Help Me. There's a Honky Tonk Angel who'll take me back in. Promised Land, If You Talk in Your Sleep. It's Midnight. Your Love's Been a Long Time Coming. And again, I just think Elvis, it's just everything about his voice in the 1970s for me is very rich. And if I had to go for a favourite, Mr. Songman I do love listening to that. But I'm going to go for There's a Honky Tonk Angel Who'll Take Me Back In on Promised Land. A beautiful album from Elvis from the 1970s, and an album that I really enjoy listening to. I've already shared this with you, the Raised on Rock album. This is on the Friday Music label. This is a gatefold. Quickly show you in the middle. I shared this before, but there you go. Next, Elvis recorded live on stage in Memphis. What a great front cover image there of an Elvis album, Graceland, and on the back you got the Graceland gates. So obviously live in concert, and on here I'm gonna go for Whole Lot of Shaking Going On is great on this. An American Trilogy, Let Me Be There, I Can't Stop Loving You, and I'm going to go for Trying to Get to You. But such a great live album this is. Elvis recorded live on stage in Memphis. It's not my favourite live recording from the 1970s, but a great album all the same. The next, Elvis has recorded at Madison Square Garden. And on the back. Now, on this one, never been to Spain. I'm going to go for Funny How Time Slips Away, Pulp Sarirani, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. But again, there's so many favourites, isn't there, on these live recordings? It's very difficult to choose. And I just think, again, what a great performance Elvis puts on at Madison Square Garden. So again, there we have Elvis as recorded at Madison Square Garden. The next one I've already shared, but this is on the Music on Vinyl label, on coloured vinyl, Promised Land. See, it's on the Music on Vinyl label, and it's a limited edition number at the bottom here. The next, is my favourite live recording from the 1970s, Elvis, Aloha from Hawaii via satellite. I've got a few copies of this. This is the reissue from 2023, so last year, the most recent release. And again, I do prefer the rehearsal concert. But on the beamed concert, I'm going to go for I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, What Now My Love, Fever, Welcome to My World, Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, Burning Love. But again, this is my favourite live recording from Elvis from the 1970s. Elvis, Aloha from Hawaii via satellite. Right, next. The next one I'm sharing with you was the gentleman whose channel I was watching recently when he was talking about Elvis music from the 1970s. He was talking about his favourite albums from the 1970s, and he was solely talking about studio albums, and he didn't include gospel or Christmas. And the album that I'm going to share next with you, he put this as his favourite from the 1970s, and I was quite surprised. I mean, it's a great album, but I think there's stronger albums from Elvis from the 1970s. But it's a gorgeous album, and it is Elvis's last but one album from Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis, Tennessee. And this is on the Music on Vinyl label. It's on beautiful coloured vinyl. And, it's got haunting ballads on this album, hasn't it? And for me, I love The Last Farewell. People to my channel will understand the meaning behind that song for me. Hurt. Just, you can't escape the vocal performance that Elvis puts into that song. To me, is mesmerizing. Love Coming Down is gorgeous. Bitter They Are, Harder They Fall, Solitaire. I mean, as you know, the Carpenters did that as well. But such a great album. Now, I am going to have to go for The Last Farewell because of the meaning it has for me. Closely followed by Hurt. And obviously, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain is a great one as well. But you can't ignore Love Coming Down either. So there we have from Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. Now the next one was released in, I think, 1979. Now I'm a bit frustrated because I couldn't find volume 1 of this in my collection. I know I've got it in my collection, but because I've got so many different records in my collection on Elvis, I couldn't find it. So it's there somewhere, but I thought I found this one, so let's get this one out. Volume 2 of Our Memories of Elvis. This was a 1979 release. Now on Our Memories of Elvis Volume 2, you've got some great track. I'm going to go Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. That's great. There's a Honky Tonk Angel Who Will Take Me Back In. For the Heart, She Wears My Ring, I Can Help. And it's as Elvis would have wanted the records to have sounded, apparently. And for me, I'm going to go for I Can Help. And there's the back. What a great images of Elvis on the front and back. Can anyone share with me what jumpsuit that is? It's like a blue jumpsuit there. I don't know the name for that jumpsuit. Please share it in the comments below. So there we have Our Memories of Elvis Volume 2. Next, I've already shared, but this is a different copy of On Stage. So this is on the Music on Vinyl label. It's on gorgeous 180 gram coloured vinyl. The next is another gospel album, He Walks Beside Me, and this is from, let's have a look, It was 1978. The image on the front there is Elvis in concert from Aloha from Hawaii. Now, on this one, Miracle of the Rosary, Where Did They Go, Lord, Somebody Bigger Than You and I, An Evening Prayer, The Impossible Dream, If I Can Dream, Padre, How Great Thou Art, Here's My Everything. Again, I love, How Great Thou Art is just outstanding. If I Can Dream, obviously. It's an unreleased version, that is. Somebody Bigger Than You and I. If I had to say what my favourite would be, The Impossible Dream I'm going to go for on this album. I love the stylization of like the Gothic style Elvis here font. There you go. Now, when you're talking about Elvis's voice, he can put his voice to anything, couldn't he? Throughout his career, you're looking at the rock and roll, country, gospel, pop, ballads. Elvis could do it. Could he put his hand to jazz if he would have wanted to? I personally think so, yes. The next one is Elvis Now. Again, great front cover there. On the back, very psychedelic, would you say, for the times, the back cover. So on here, I'm trying to say different songs on each album. That Put Your Hand in the Hand's great. Fools Rush In Where Angels Fear to Tread. We Can Make the Morning. I Was Born About 10,000 Years Ago. Help Me Make It Through the Night. Now, it's difficult because me and my twin brother love Until It's Time for You to Go, and my mum loves that song. On this, I'm going to go for, I love We Can Make the Morning as well. If I had to put an Elvis song on now from this album to listen to, We Can Make the Morning. So Elvis Now, and this is from, 1972 Elvis Now was. The next is a reissue of That's the Way It Is from the 1980s, with its original sticker, 50th anniversary. I've already gone through what my favourites are on here. I love everything about the different images of Elvis with the song titles underneath it. I think that's such a great touch. Next, another version of Aloha from Hawaii. I think, this is the original. And then finally, again, we've got Aloha from Hawaii. This is on 4 LPs. This is my favourite. And this includes the rehearsal concert. Now, the rehearsal concert, for me, by far is better than the beamed one around the world. And my favourite by far goes to What Now My Love and An American Trilogy. And I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. Burning Love. It's just everything about the album is just absolutely superb. Now, they're the albums that I wanted to share with you on this upload today from the 1970s. I really wanted to get across my love of Elvis music from the 1970s. And again, for me, when I've got a day off or I've got some spare time and I want to listen to some Elvis, how do I make my decision what I want to listen to? And if I am honest with you, it would always be, I want to put a 1970s record on or 1970s CD on with Elvis music. And again, that's not to take away anything from Elvis Presley music from the 1950s or the 1960s. I think for me, I have to be in the mood to listen to the early Elvis from the 1950s because, again, that was music very rarely heard in our household growing up. And but being an avid Elvis fan and a collector from a young age, the 1970s is what I started collecting first, and then I went into the 60s and 50s. And when you listen to each different era of Elvis, his voice does change, and how he uses his voice changes as well. He uses it to his advantage, and he knows how to perform each song. He knows what his fans want. And when he was live in concert, he gave 100%. Throughout the 1970s, he said to his the Memphis Mafia, that crowd out there, I want them to be I want them to be treated as it was their very first Elvis concert that they had come to, and he wanted to give 100%. Unfortunately, sometimes Elvis couldn't give 100% because he wasn't well enough, or he had to cancel concerts from time to time. But when Elvis hit that stage, he gave 100%, and I think, for me, when you look at music from the 1970s, I look at the studio albums, and the YouTube guy on his channel, when he was talking about albums from the 1970s, and he was just mainly focusing on the studio albums, I thought that was a great idea, because again, you also had the gospel albums, you also have the ones where he was live in concert, which I have shared with you here, but when you look at just the studio albums from the 1970s, from the 1970 all the way up to Moody Blue from 77, you had a different mix of studio albums from Elvis throughout the 70s. Some of the albums were quite melancholy, where they were quite soft and more ballady and a bit softer, and then you had some other albums that had still some rocking songs on there, which is what Elvis probably wanted to give. Elvis knew what his fans wanted, and I think sometimes, especially I'm going to say during the 1960s, you could see that Elvis was performing some songs in the studio that he just did not want to record, and I think you can tell in the way he recorded that some of them songs from the 1960s. For me, I always go on about particular songs like you've got Old MacDonald from Double Trouble, Hey Hey Hey, you've got Five Sleepyheads, and Sing You Children. To me, I don't think he sounds like he's enjoying singing them songs. I mean, but when you go into the 1970s, he's got complete control of his career. Elvis was in control of the music side of his career. As we all know, Colonel Tom Parker was in charge of the other aspect of Elvis's career, the concert dates, the concert tours, the heavy schedule. But Elvis would not record anything he did not want to record. And I think that is where he had complete control. Should he have had more control? Definitely. I think Elvis should have had more control over slimming down on the concert tours in regards to not losing weight. What I mean is just it was constant, wasn't it? And I think obviously, again, I don't know the reasonings behind that. Maybe people might in the comments below. I think I know some people said it was money worries, and the Colonel just wanted it was just a constant conveyor belt of keeping Elvis on tour, 1 month or 2 months break, back on tour, and it just showed that all concerts sold out. So Elvis was a main draw whenever he was on the concert circuit. And throughout the 1970s, I'm in awe of the man from the 1970s. I just think, again, the go-to for me is this 1970s music. It gets me into a place where if I'm having a bad day, it gets me settled. It gets me more relaxed, and I can listen to certain albums. I can listen to certain tracks. I can listen to certain favorite albums, and I just know it's going to make me feel better. And again, I've been asked many times before, why is it that why don't you go to the 1950s when you feel down? It's a difficult question to answer, because if I put Elvis on from the 1950s, let's say, if I'm feeling down, it doesn't get me into a position where I feel better within myself. I want to put the music on that I want to listen to, and that is Elvis music from the 1970s, because I just think that goes to my heart more. I think the 1950s, I listen to Elvis music from the 1950s. When I'm listening to Elvis most of the evening, I'll put any era of Elvis on. And I've said it before, the 1950s is the era that I listen to the least in when I am listening to Elvis. It's either the 70s, 60s, and the 50s on the odd occasion. And some people are very conscious by saying, oh God, but that's where it all started. How can you not go to the 50s? I know what the 1950s means to me as an Elvis fan. The 1950s is just, you can't take away what Elvis did in the 1950s. He absolutely broke all the boundaries, didn't he? And he broke, everyone's expectations, and Elvis came along when everyone needed him. And I absolutely don't take anything away from the 1950s. Elvis music from the 1950s, it is some of the best songs or tracks he recorded throughout his career. There is some great rock and roll tracks, some beautiful ballads, some great country, gospel. The 1960s, we all know, mainly soundtrack albums. For me, Elvis is Back, great album. Then you had Something for Everybody, Potluck. But, it's when you get up to the NBC 1968 record release, where Elvis is back on that stage in front of that audience, surrounded, when he's surrounded in that square in the studio, you can just see the love that they had for Elvis, and he absolutely, he absolutely, you can see he's loving it, isn't he? He's absolutely thinking to himself, yeah, I'm back. This is what I need to get back at doing. And I think then, obviously, you're going on to the album from 1969, back in Memphis, and then you're going into the 1970s. And again, before I sign out, look, thank you for taking the time out to listening to this upload today and sharing the 1970s albums with me. There's a lot more albums from the 1970s. I do realise that, but I didn't have more of an opportunity to take everything out, because this upload would have been far too long. And I just think, again, for me, when you talk about Elvis music from different eras, you can, or some Elvis fans will say, well, how can you choose a favourite era? How can you say one era is better than the other? Do you know, for me, I as an Elvis fan and an avid collector, I actually can say the 1970s is my favourite era of Elvis music. That's my personal preference. If someone's favourite era is the 1950s, fantastic. Don't take that away from you. If someone's favourite era is the 1960s, again, amazing. Won't take anything from you. And again, some people will say, I love everything about each era. I do. I just say Elvis music in general is just the best. That it's the best out there. But what I mean is, I am someone that the 1970s has a special meaning in my life as an Elvis collector and an Elvis fan who listens to Elvis. Most days, there's very rarely a day that goes by when I do not listen to Elvis. And whether it's for half an hour to an hour, I listen to Elvis most days. And again, it puts me in a place where it makes me feel better within myself. And, sometimes my husband's upstairs or my husband's watching TV in the living room. sometimes I'll come into the dining room and I'll put my earphones on and I'm in a world of my own, listening to Elvis music from the 1970s or the 1960s or 50s, whatever my choosing is. So again, look, thank you all for taking this time out to return to 100% Pure Elvis today. And I just want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you who continue to return to my channel. You know, the channel is going really well and it is onwards and upwards. The channel itself, what I'm going to say is it's performing better than my expectations. And again, I started this channel for the love of Elvis and I wanted to share my love of Elvis. And I brought people along who thoroughly enjoy watching this channel and give me great feedback, which I am forever grateful for. And again, you know, if you have any questions about myself or any questions about Elvis in particular, don't hesitate to ask in the comments below. I will always try and reply as soon as I possibly can. Now, I do work a full-time job, so sometimes, you know, I might just give it a thumbs up and a like and not reply. That isn't because I don't want to reply to your specific messages. It's because I'm at work and I just don't have the time to reply to each and every one of you. But please believe me from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate each and every comment that I get, even the negative ones, which are very rare and in between. You know, when you get a negative comment, you know, you've just got to brush them off, because you're going to get the odd Elvis fan or the odd Elvis person that thinks they know more than you. I don't know everything about Elvis. I'm not an Elvis Bible. I get things wrong. And everyone on this channel, you know, sometimes I get corrected, especially on images of Elvis. Sometimes I don't know what year that image is from. You know, I want to be corrected. I don't want to give out false information. But again, all I would say is, you know, let's keep 100% Pure Elvis going. If you are looking at subscribing but haven't as yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and welcome to the 100% Pure Elvis family. You won't be disappointed in joining the 100% Pure Elvis channel and sharing our love of Elvis together. And again, I just wanted to give a massive shout out to Gina over at Patrick Cat's Place for Elvis fans. Gina, you know, I know recently you have emailed me on my personal email address. Again, I do apologize that I haven't replied as yet. I am just about to reply to you when I come off this upload. I am in the process of getting a goodie bag sent across to you, because for me, you have been an absolute support mechanism for me on this channel. You know, Gina is someone that has supported me from the beginning and gave me the confidence to keep my channel going. And Gina, you know, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I promise you, you know, the things I'm sending your way, you know, you will not be disappointed. And, you know, I'm sorry it took a while to get it sorted out, but, you know, look, thank you so much. But thank you to each and every one of you. And from the bottom of my heart, please keep Elvis close to your hearts. Please keep on playing his music, and love to you all, everybody. Speak soon. Bye-bye.